Welcome to Barcelona. Here in the Formula One paddock, you can see behind me, preparations are well underway ahead of the 2019 Spanish Grand Prix. And of course, the Spanish Grand Prix is always a race where there's plenty of car upgrades. And I am joined by the perfect man to talk about them, Giorgio Piola. Now, Giorgio has been running around in the pit lane in the paddock trying to catch glimpses of what we'll see on the cars come Friday practice. And he's had a good look, in particular, at the top cars. So, Giorgio, you've been looking at the cars recently. What do you make? Let's start with Mercedes. What have you seen from them?
Mercedes, as usual, they came a big upgrade to the car. The new front wing, different. The second last lap as a slot in the middle, just in the central section, completely new to Mercedes. They never did, so it's an idea. Okay, that Red Bull exploited very well McLaren 2 and Ferrari, but never seen on the Mercedes. The new mirror, with blowing a little bit on the style Ferrari had the last year, and now has Red Bull and Toro Rosso and other cars. So again, a new idea. New deflector, new turning vane, and also the barge board are modified. So a big package as usual. But Mercedes this season, always at every race they introduce something new. So as usual, the updates of Mercedes are always very keen from race to race.
And of course the big question is how all these parts work together. It's very difficult to tell nowadays with the complexity of the airflows exactly what effect they're trying to get, but this will be very much about parts working together, won't it?
Yes, but until now we never saw something going wrong on Mercedes. So every time they take an update, is work. Okay, maybe sometimes the car is a little bit more difficult to set up compared, for example, even Ferrari. But then also we have not to forget the rear wheel, a little bit of forward steering wheel, just 1 degree or something more. But again, was quite difficult to set up. But at the end, Hamilton was able to set up the car very well on Saturday in Baku, and we saw the result.
And of course, the other big question is Ferrari. We talked about Ferrari a bit yesterday, but now, Giorgio, you've been able to have a look at the car. How much has Ferrari bought?
Ferrari, they concentrate much more on the engine. So, of course, nothing that we can see. We have a rumor, we have information. They made a new cylinder, bimetallic new cylinder. They improve a lot to work in a higher temperature in the combustion chamber. But most important also, they could have more power and less fuel consumption. Because at the end of the race, Ferrari in Baku, they have to slow down a little bit because they finish the race at the limit with the fuel, while, surprise, Mercedes, they finished the race with more than 7 kilos still on the fuel tank. So there was a big difference in this power usage of the engine, Mercedes engine compared to Ferrari. On the cars, we saw a new engine cover with a bigger fin on top of the engine cover, a new front wing, and then of course we have to see much better because unfortunately still this year, not all the time all the new package is put on the car on Thursday scrutiny. Next year, finally, we will see the car like it will be run on FP1 already on Thursday afternoon.
This, of course, is the problem, isn't it? You see some of the parts, but not necessarily all of them. But in terms of Ferrari, I mean, aero isn't really the problem for them necessarily, is it? That we know they've got a good car aero-wise. It's working those tyres that's the key. Any sign that there's anything that will help them with that, or is that more a question of how they work the tyres and prepare them and just understanding?
I think that the weak point of the Ferrari is more the suspension. Mercedes and Red Bull, they made massive improvement. They are working a lot especially on the front suspension, while Ferrari, from the beginning, as I saw the car, it looks a little bit just a simple evolution from last year's car, especially on the suspension wise. In the back, I know they introduced a new rear suspension, and we are waiting when there will be the moment to have a front suspension. The car seems to be very critical on the ride height, so very sensitivity on the ride height. So it changed setup, aerodynamic setup. Here in Barcelona should be good because in the testing they were flying, so I believe they will be good. But they suffer, for example, a lot in Melbourne for this problem.
And of course the car's been good in the faster corners, hasn't it? There's plenty of that here in Barcelona, and they should know the track well and how to get the best out of the car from pre-season testing. So yeah, a big weekend for Ferrari. And of course, the third big team, Red Bull, Honda. Now, Red Bull have had a good start to the season. They haven't quite been up there, but they've been at a good level, nipping at the heels of the top teams. Saw them performing very well in Baku, in fact, where they were pretty strong. What have you seen from them?
I saw something that In one way, I'm happy because I was the first one to spot it. In another way, I'm very upset because it took some race to spot it, something that was incredibly visible. Adrian Newey made something in the front suspension that nobody has ever done in Formula One, multi-link suspension. We saw something in the back by Stewart on the 98 car, and the one that introduced the central middle oil tank and the carbon gearbox, and there was also a multi-link rear suspension. Adrian Newey put the multi-link on the top wishbone in the front suspension, and we saw very well how they could save the tire during the race, so this can be a big advantage. And of course I'm quite, let's say, technically excited to see something completely new in Formula One, and again thank to Adrian Newey. And the car seems to be reaching slowly the level of the other two, and it will be massively good for the sport, especially because we know Verstappen is loved by the young people, so the crowd loves him, and we saw in the Belgian Grand Prix when there is Verstappen, it was completely full. And so it will be wonderful to see not only Ferrari and Mercedes fighting for the championship, but with Red Bull can fight together, Red Bull Honda can fight together.
And did you see anything much on the Red Bull, the car itself? Obviously, we're used to them bringing lots of little aero parts. Sometimes they brought more than 100 pieces to races. They really can produce stuff very, very quickly. So it's often tiny details.
Yes, but again, Adrian is maniac of millimetric updates. So as far as I saw from now, the car went to the scrutineer until now. I didn't see anything measure different from Baku. Of course, they will have more downforce in the wing because Baku, and especially in the low downforce track, Red Bull is the one that's using the minimum wing angle possible. So for sure there will be something new. But at the moment I didn't see the car at the scrutineer. But again, we don't have to expect big visual things, but just small detail that, as you said before, in aerodynamic, everything has to go to work together. So if you do even a small adjustment in the front wing, it must be also the barge board, the turning vane, the floor, the diffuser, everything has to talk, we say talk together, and this is the case, and I believe Red Bull can be very good.
And are there any other teams you've seen anything interesting for, or you're particularly excited to see who's bought what? Racing Point, for example, are meant to have quite a big upgrade.
Yes, I know, but I didn't see Racing Point and also us. And I know something that I love it because us tomorrow morning they will do experiment, one car standard and one car with the update. And this is the best way because very often it's so complicated to understand little detail, the difference, remembering from the race before, even if we have electronic camera, so it's easier than in the past. But if the two cars in the same garage are different, this makes our work much better. So for sure we'll see all the difference in the ASA. They said have a good aerodynamic package, and as you say, also Racing Point.
Well, we will be looking around closely at all the cars as the weekend goes. Giorgio will be prowling around in the pit lane, trying to see what he can pick up and find out. He's described himself as technically excited by one car, and when Giorgio's technically excited, interesting things happen in the Formula One world.